and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where we bring you stories and you listen to them with rapt attention. I am, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we are here to continue this story. What kind of world do we have here going, guys? We got kind of a One Piece style, lots of ships world. We got aliens, giant aliens from another planet attacking our planet. We got volcanoes. We got a new frontier every 40 years or so.
Yep.
We have a master swordsman who everyone thinks is holding the rights to something, but is in fact stopping the apocalypse from happening. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and then there's a evil villain. I don't know if we have a name for him yet, but he does have a station on one of the islands where he is trying to open some of these doorways that some people have access to kind of travel between distance, and he's trying to open them to other worlds through time, for whatever nefarious reason he has for that. But.
Right. We have a sailing ship captain called Seabreeze, Seabiscuit, Free the Sea.
Windsong.
Couldn't remember the name. And we have, Reed, I like your map. Reed drew a map because he had history, so he was talking about the world. What are your guys' elements for this week as we try and wrap this story up?
I have unique vehicle.
I have goal.
I have unique weapon. I feel like Seth should go.
Okay, then I have a few things to kind of throw out that are, I wouldn't say world building, but a little bit tied in with this to that would kind of bring it to the end of what it might look like.
Okay, sounds good. Let's
Obviously,
hear it.
Goal. So I think we had established that these giants that had attacked years ago, they were coming from this other planet. That before this, they were kind of like in a tandem matched
orbit or whatever.
Orbit. Yeah. I was going to say rotation, but that kind of mirrored there. It would be implied that there was used to be trade. They used to use these gateways to go back and forth. However, everything changed when the giant nation attacked.
Right.
No. So to put a perspective on that, what I'm thinking is, and I don't know if it would exactly look like this, but each of these planets would have had kind of and I'm not like super sciencey, but you guys are familiar with like the firmament idea, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so each of them would have had that, and however, and maybe this isn't sciencey, but this is science fiction, so sciencey fictioning it up here, they would have had somewhat of like a firmament idea that encapsulated each one, and then with the electromagnetic draw, kept them at a proper kind of almost like a magnet.
Okay. Now you're saying firmament, like not like what it says in the Bible, the waters below and the waters above. You're talking about like flat Earth theory firmament, like a hard metal dome firmament, right?
Not exactly hard metal. It would be more like maybe a little bit more biblical.
Okay, so a barrier, but a permeable barrier.
I think that's where some of the calamity comes from.
Right. Okay. Continue.
So then the people on the one planet decided that so they could kind of step through these gateways back and forth. However, then realizing that there was more outside of that, right? They took to space.
Right.
However, it destroyed their firmament.
Yeah.
And so then they sent their ships and broke through, and either it's quite damaged or maybe this other one is damaged now, and that's why there's the upheaval and the frozen caps, as you have all that extra material and kind of off balance with the thing. And so now that those aren't there keeping them kind of in their correct magnetic field, it pulls, either the one or the other, into that, I don't know, different orbit that then creates more of the, some of the other calamities that, they're getting.
That makes sense.
And so, how would I hear it? So ultimately the goal would be, I think, what they might figure out is that the new frontier would be that other planet if they can get to it.
Okay.
Because kind of like, I don't know, maybe a spoiler for anything, unless you guys had something where there really was something on that other planet, but any of them that jumped that other planet, and maybe they have to deal with some of the same calamities like they deal here, but they took a hard like jump over here to try to think it was better.
You're talking about, when you say they, you're speaking of the
giants, the the
giants.
other,
Okay.
yeah, or the with the perceived giants. They're the other race, but they have the giant suits, right?
Right,
So
right,
as they started getting that calamity at first, they tried to jump over here, which then triggered this. And
right.
so I think so as the goal would be to one, stop the villain from whatever his nefarious idea of, power he's trying to get, but then also open up that gateway back so that it basically opens up another, either for these people to go back to their home world now that they're kind of acclimated to how this kind of particular calamity structure works, and maybe they can try to adjust something on that side, or just open up a whole new frontier that they can get to.
Right. And when you say the people, you're talking about the giant people.
Yeah.
Gotcha, gotcha. Because I remember we had said that some of the people who had manned the giant machines had kind of, put their giant suits, mecha suits down to rest under the ground and then have kind of assimilated into the population. And that's where we get some of our magic system sharing of experience and stuff like that from. Do you guys remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So the goal is to that's what the giant people that are in this world currently are trying to do, which is travel back.
Well, I don't know if they would have kind of forgotten what they were here, but I think the ones that came over here, it was like it was an invasion force. Like their world was
Right.
being destroyed,
Right.
but they kind of came onto, like, they jumped one sinking ship onto another ship that was kind of sinking because they also broke through their barrier to come here, and now have just kind of assimilated here.
It could be kind of like, Seth, you understand this. Do you know when you're playing Age of Empires and someone starts to invade you and you just send a single villager
Yeah.
or a group of villagers to your friend's base and then you mine
Mm-hmm.
all their gold? And it's like, well, you kind of put me in a terrible position. So it's like the giant, that race, the opposite planet, something happened to them that pierced their firmament and their whole thing started to degrade, and maybe they lost their ability to travel via the ways over to the primary planet, and so then they traveled over, but in doing so they destroyed the firmament here, and it was like, we're an invasion force, we'll take you over if you won't take us. But some of them knew that really what they were doing was trying to like escape whatever terrible thing was happening in their planet.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. It's kind of a complex series of motivations and things. I enjoy that a lot. So the goal is what? To discover what it was that originally attacked them, for them to go back. What's going to be the goal of our hero? Because remember, our hero is a guy trying to become the best swordsman, and his uncle is the
Mm-hmm.
cartographer. Was it his uncle?
Right. Right. Yes.
His uncle's the cartographer, and so he's exposed to that end, but he's also sort of going around to these different dojos, kind of Naruto style, kind of Dragon Ball Z
Pokemon earning
style, kind of
badges.
Pokemon style, defeating all these great champions. And at some point he has to go, because I remember one thing I thought was really cool was that the main large continents are the ones that are constantly in upheaval. So all of like high society and all of secured society is on these islands, So you go to the mainland and that's where everyone's living in tents and everything's kind of pedestrian, peasant, that's where everything's kind of hard and difficult. But then you go back to these islands and like every square foot of it is like manicured gardens, like beautiful areas. That's the visage that I kind of had for it, but
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
great. So my thought is the unique weapon. And what it is it's less a unique weapon and it's more of a unique metal, right? It was developed completely separately, and I think the reality is that it has a whole system of magic by itself, and it's what the original planet used and had, that they would, in contrast to the giants' abilities to give and take thoughts and experiences, which they have kind of, through assimilating with humanity, that gene has kind of taken over as like the main quote unquote magic style of the world. But so the esoteric use in any other form but the metal has been lost. But what it is it's a metal, it's common occurrence, any metal can be turned into this metal. It just has to spend a number of years per pound of it in like a certain depth of the ocean, right? So if you want it to happen really fast, you can get it to the bottom as fast as possible, but getting, 100 tons of metal to the bottom of the ocean and then back is really difficult. So most people just have like a chests, a couple hundred fathoms down, and they go and they put the metal there. But what it is, so any metal that's put there is converted to this metal just via alchemical natural process. So it doesn't matter what kind of metal it is unless it floats. Obviously, if you make a bowl out of it, it would take like 100 years to turn something like the size of a penny into this metal if you just had it like in the shallows on a beach. So it's rare, but everyone can make it, and there's a huge industry in delving very deep and finding deposits of metal that have been underwater for so long. Anyways, regardless, what this metal is it allows for what's called like mending or molding. What it allows is if I have this metal and let's say it's just like a rod a foot long, and I hold one end and Reed holds the other end, we can share our thoughts with each other. So we share our thoughts with each other, and he can tell me things and communicate things to me that he wouldn't be able to use his mouth to do. And so the use of it in weapons is that it's very strong, it's very sharp, and when you fight with someone, the emotion of fighting and like the aggravated emotive state of fighting is you use it as not just a contest of fighting, but as a contest of wills as well. So Reed and I would face off against each other, and every time our swords touched, it would be like this chance to like trip Reed up. So some people have it perfected so when their swords are touching, they can like manipulate like the sound that you hear. So it sounds like someone's walking around behind you or something like that. It's just you are allowed to sort of touch each other's minds in that way. And it's what all standard dueling swords and all standard dojos and fighting styles utilize this specific thing, because the idea being is that you have to face your opponent like bare-chested, like open-hearted, like with your heart in your hand.
Right.
I
have this picture of like you're squaring off, and you have a lot of times where you'll have the
Continue.
you have a lot of times where you smash your sword at someone and they block you, and it's kind of and you're kind of like holding one another, and then through that you could through that connection you could dominate the other one's will,
Right.
and just force submission if that was the goal. Otherwise, I have like oftentimes in some of the movies they'll show people are sword fighting, and you have like Excalibur, and you hit and sparks just fly.
Yeah. So that's the unique weapon. So it basically entails, and I think that's one of the reasons why this planet was so effective in their combat against the giants, because the giants weren't ready for that sort of level of sort of emotional attack. They were an ordered society of giving and taking.
Right.
I'll give you this skill and I'll take from you this memory. I'll give you, and then these humans were like, I'm going to put on you all of this rage, or I'm going to subtly kind of trick you with making you think you're seeing sort of bright lights and just kind of this weird, so yeah, that's the unique weapon.
Okay. Yeah, the way the story is going, the unique vehicle isn't any big surprise. It's I can't talk. Winsong's
Seabiscuit.
Yeah, it's Winsong's ship. She calls it the Ocean Flyer. She has spent a lot of time and working with where she lives in the southern continent.
Yeah.
And kind of in isolation, and they realize that to be in contact with the rest of humanity, they're going to have to manage getting across the oceans. And they've developed shipbuilding to an art that is not heard of in the rest of the civilized world.
Right.
She's the long narrow beam, that whole dynamic where the longer the beam the longer the keel in contrast to the beam, long and narrow makes faster. And she's figured out that the physics of hanging lots of sail, and the Ocean Flyer is fast. She's got
Does it have an outboard motor?
No, she's got barometers. She's a really careful student, a meteorological student. she's got compasses and barometers, and she watches the winds and the clouds and the movements, and she can dance, shall we say, with the big girl. That's what she calls the ocean. And that she noticed there's little skips and warps on this planet. She'll be sailing in the ocean, and there'll be the ship will seemingly like skid or slip through, and kind of like a shudder. And she notices that this, it's just a kind of momentary skips or warps, she calls it. And she noticed that when this is something I just added when I was listening to you, Levi, when she's carrying a heavy load, cargo of this metal, it is particularly reactive, and she realized that it probably has to do with the waves. And there may be entering points, gateways in the ocean, and that if you learned how to, there may be, ocean fluid. It's more fluid than when on bare rock on the mountainscape, right? And so she's been hoping to seek out this Quincy that has been studying the waves, but she doesn't know that he's the villain sidekick, and he's got up to all kinds of nefarious ideas of his own. But she is just trying to manage this world, trying to sail around and find cool stuff and pick up cargoes and trade it for stuff. And
I had this thought, Reed, as you were talking about it, and my thing as well. What if, so I said that this metal is used for weapons, but it's the old world power.
Right.
What if the sea biscuit, sorry, what is it? The sea skipper?
No, the ocean flyer is the ship.
The ocean flyer.
Windsong is the wise old woman, and she's the...
What if the keel is made of this?
Ooh, yeah.
Right?
Ironclad.
The sails have been replaced.
Yeah.
Right? I was thinking the sails, but the keel is made of this metal, and it comes in and goes all the way up to
like the yard arms and the mast.
Yeah, and the steering wheel.
Yeah.
And so when she is sailing, she is essentially connected to the whole ship.
Yeah.
And what it does is it's the same thing with swords. I just realized this now. It's because it connects you. When you have a sword made out of this, your brain assimilates it as part of your body much easier than a normal sword. So the same thing with the sea biscuit. Sorry, I can't remember the name. The Windsong. No, that's the name of the girl.
Yeah, the ocean flyer.
The ocean flyer. So when she touches it with her bare skin, obviously, it connects her to the whole ship.
Yeah.
And that's how she's able, and obviously, her sailors have found it's much easier to go, you have much surer footing on the ocean flyer when you walk around barefoot.
Of course.
Right? And some people will do it, but even in the far north, they will do it because when their feet are touching it, they are communicating the emotions to the whole crew. Sort of becomes a giant organism together.
Yep.
And that's why she's so legendary, and that's why she's so famous, and she has this kind of sixth sense about things, and she can notice things. That's kind of an interesting, and there could be other things like that, but this is like that.
Yeah.
I like that. That's cool. Not to completely change your entire ship and make it.
No, I was kind of headed that way anyway.
Yeah.
And it's funny, it just kind of dropped into place.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I have an idea. So as far as like the goal, how it deals with the hero, perhaps the guy that's on top of the mountain, right? So he's from ages ago. All he knows and remembers, even though he's kind of pulled all these memories and stuff from all these people that come to fight him.
Yeah.
He is trying to stop this this gate because he's got like the key to the gate that would open back up to that other world, correct?
Right, yes.
And so maybe that's what the hero's goal for that would be. Maybe in their things, they learn that that's where then they need to open, the gate so that when it lines back up, people can re-travel back to that other planet and assess what's going on there.
Right. It could be something like people want to travel there, or the villain wants to travel there, and he's kind of in the shadows using I don't remember his name, Reed. I'm so sorry. You come up with these great names for people. The villain's sidekick. What was it? Seth?
Quincy.
Yeah.
Quincy.
Yeah. It was Seth. You came up with the villain's sidekick.
Yeah, Quincy.
Yeah. So he's like using Quincy, and Quincy is just like a researcher guy. And so the villain's kind of using Quincy, and then sort of uses the hero or other good people to sort of say like we're going to travel to this world to see what's up, but he has obviously his own nefarious or sort of devious plans that are associated with that.
Yeah, if he gets there and then basically holds the one, it's probably strewn with a bunch of these giant race or whatever the other
Yeah.
race, which then he could basically go, and if he can get there, right, if he can get a passage when it's open and then shut it from the other side, he's got, another 40 years or whatever it is before it's lined up again, and to basically pull all the knowledge off of basically the
Right.
dead on this other planet.
Right. It could be, he could even be, the villain could be one of these other giant race, who has essentially entrenched himself in the nobility or in the sort of upper echelons of the government or as some kind of criminal and is basically trying to go back, so that he can kind of like restart the rebellion. Because as he sees it, I that's kind of this interesting thought is that like someone attacked the giants' world before they came and invaded ours. We used to be allies with the giants.
Right.
And that's a history that people don't remember except for the guy on the top of the mountain,
So I don't think it's that someone attacked them. It's that they figured out like space travel. And that's what destroyed their thing in the first
Okay.
place.
Gotcha.
So now that they're where they're at, not only, that other planet that comes by, but this planet that they're sitting on does not have any of the knowledge of how to basically get off of it. They can use the ways, to travel back and
Right.
forth, but then obviously you would have to have some connection to open a way somewhere. But that's what caused their calamity in the first place was them, reaching for the stars, breaking through their
Firmament,
which then messed up the rotation pattern, the
orbit.
orbit.
Yeah.
And so in like a desperate thing, the only other place they knew of was to then crash into this other place, which then destroyed theirs, which is then why, there's a good amount of ocean, the frozen caps, the messed up kind of
Turmoil,
turmoil kind
Yeah.
of stuff going on.
Seismic activity, volcanoes, earthquakes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't see that there would be like a grand way to fix that. It is what it is. And so if he can get back, then he'll have the knowledge on how to go to somewhere else. If he can somehow strip it from whatever is left on that other planet.
Right. The thing I'm thinking is that the villain is basically trying to form the villain is paying Quincy to make keys or keepers or code breakers, right? People who can basically find these ways and then repurpose them for whatever it is that they want. So these experiments that are being done on people that Quincy is doing, in Quincy's mind, it's all in the name of science at first, but the ultimate goal is for the villain to be able to, once we launch our assault on the plateau, right, we need someone who knows how to use the key and the sword and activate all the stuff. And we don't have any knowledge for them. All we have is we need to teach people how to intuit it, so that's kind of an interesting, the question is does the story end with them getting, because I feel like you have the hero who is kind of a little bit aimless, he's just kind of going around and he travels sometimes with his uncle in the plains and stuff like that. Other times he's, traveling to the various islands, slowly acquiring his, filling out his swordsmanship passport so that he can get passage to the mountain, right? Kind of not selfish. It's not selfish to try and do something really great, crazy for yourself, but he's not a hero. He's not like, I'm going to save the world. That's not the place that he's in. That's not how he's viewing fighting this guy. But I kind of have this idea that before the villain is sort of revealed, or Quincy is kind of revealed, that the hero gets kind of a sponsorship. He's gotten enough wins under his belt that he can start making his way towards the continent where the mountains and the plateau are.
Right.
And so the villain, it's like, this is just another guy who we can have to go up there and try and, win this thing back from this guy. And the villain's been kind of trying to get someone to win against the swordsman at the top of the mountain for like hundreds of years now.
So here's an idea. See how this goes. Maybe the villain has found a way to open his own personal gate, right? But only in that transfer when someone defeats that swordsman.
Okay.
So our hero defeats the swordsman, right? But
Okay.
he's up there alone. However, then some of our other, let's say, side heroes, sidekicks, whatever, they come across what the villain has in mind. But then he escapes with him and his whatever entourage he takes with him. However, then being at the top of the mountain, he can open, not the villain, but our hero, he can then open the gate back up to let other people across, who then have to then maybe with it ending with, some of our heroes from this story opening a gate to jump over to try to catch him in this, presumably empty world.
Right. Right.
As that's kind of then moving in towards the calamity section on this one and that one, really. So they're kind of jumping, they're hell divers.
Yeah, basically.
Jumping into an unknown world with who knows what's in there, to chase the one guy. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
You can make a sort of a diverse enough cast. The hero's sidekick, I was just thinking hero's sidekick could be like a guy who escaped from this compound that Quincy has.
Yeah, he was one of the experimentees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And or him and his twin sister escaped, and one of them can see the ways and one of them can enter the ways.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of invaluable to have both of them. And I like this. It's kind of a weird, it kind of I almost want to do three more on this, because I have this feeling in my guts that it's got really interesting potential. But here we are kind of at the end. We typically do about 3 per story, and we've kind of wrapped it up, but I'm also feeling maybe this is what I should write a short story about next year or this year, 2025. So
Yeah. This is a good storyline.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, you could do backstories, like the whole process of Windsong, exploring, and finding after the last upheaval with the volcanoes and stuff, and finding, new deposits of certain resources and whatnot. And there's all kinds of things that are going on.
Yeah, the cartographer and everything he's doing.
Yeah, and
Let alone all the backs. I would say that there's a whole gaggle of people that at some point they'd either have to free at that island,
right,
where they were doing all the experiments. I was just thinking, I don't know, a couple of them. You said the twins, or perhaps they've got a piece of that metal, and then they've put it under their skin, half of each one, so they can then pass thoughts or skills. So if one of them's being tortured, they could just give the information to the other person and honestly not know, right?
Right. Yeah.
So they could pass something back and forth, or have it where they could put something in their purse or their bag and send it into the other one.
Or
almost like mini portals or ways.
A thing I was thinking of is Quincy could have, this is kind of messed up, but he's a bad guy, so it's okay. Kind of have an interrogation method where you're laying down on a bed, and he has acupuncture needles in you, connected to a symphony of people who are all communicating to you really specific information, and kind of creates an artificial, a program creates an artificial reality. And so you're sitting there thinking that you're talking to your father, but it's really 30 people around you, feeding you all this little tiny stimulus, really in a really complex way. Or even, those what are those, it's like a ninja tool. It's like a knife with a chain attached to it, that, except really a really thin wire, you throw it at somebody across the room and it sticks them, and then they think they hear someone saying something, and so then they say something else. I like the idea of being able to kind of it's metal. I don't know.
Yeah.
I had all these weird kind of disparate ideas that I'm these kind of deserve some follow-up. So maybe I will try and write a short story based in this world, because it's got a really cool, I love the One Piece motif that my brain keeps coming back to, with the ships and the islands and the pirates, and then the exploration and the swords, and I'm going to be the best. It's very anime. The whole thing is very anime, and I like it a lot. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Instead of continuing the story on, I'm going to try and write a short story on this year. That's my plan.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Seth, you got anything else you want to add to the story before we wrap it up?
No, I think that's it.
Great. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait, It Gets Better. If you like this episode, if you want to listen to my short story, God bless you. If you want to, though, send me an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or send me a message on Twitter at @getsbettercast. We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear your suggestions, your comments, your critiques, and just relax a little bit, guys. Just wait, because it gets better.